All right. Welcome to Open Office Hours, everyone. This is a time where every month we break down to help you gain traction in the most important places of your business. So Andrew will do a short presentation, but after that, we'll open up for questions to help you get unstuck this week. And today, Andrew's going to kind of break down creating effective product teams and how it can create a greater impact on your startup or your business. So on that, my name is Jacob Miller. I'm the marketing and brand manager at Headway. And I'm just here to kind of support the questions and answer comments and stuff, and be a part of the conversation as well. So that's enough about me. I can hand it over to Andrew, and he can start talking about the topic.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jacob. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. We have a little bit of a deck, just some visuals to really help us walk through this conversation. So today we're talking about creating effective product teams. As Jacob mentioned, we'll go over a light presentation, then open up the floor for questions. So introduce yourself, have a question, submit it in the chat. This time is for you and kind of your teams, and get, if you're thinking about creating a product team or, launching a startup, you'll likely have, a good amount of applicable learnings here. So as Jacob said, I'm partner and CEO at Headway. We don't have to dive into that, but our goal is to bring entrepreneurial ideas to market and keep them there. So really helping founders and innovation teams launch these new ventures through product strategy, design, and development. And all of that is really around us creating effective product teams and creating kind of this Goldilocks zone of product team that focuses on the right things at the right time. And for us, that's startups looking to launch new products and corporations that need to innovate. And we do this through these four phases. So discovering new ideas, new opportunities, going out to the market, testing demand, testing behavior, building solutions towards those. And then once we have and are serving customers in the market, figuring out how we start to grow those. All right, so let's talk about product teams. So product teams, you can think about it in a few different ways. So right now, this is a Headway, and this is for many companies, you have this hierarchical structure around departments that are, siloed. So you have product strategy, business strategy, you have a lot of those siloed together, and, people report up and down that chain to each other. Same thing in design, you might have a head of design, a design lead, those sorts of things, and in development. And the goal with product teams, let me just make this a little bigger, is to, so as I mentioned, departments are structured around different sets of hard skills, siloed within a company. They're not really cross-functional. We'll talk a little bit about cross-functional as we get to it. But what we're going to focus on is creating these product teams, these things that go across functions of a company, departments of a company, and really start to align around a common goal and an outcome, and really ultimately an impact that you can have for your customers. So as I mentioned, structured around specific vision, outcome, and mission with common goals, where you have this team of people together that are rowing in the same direction. And that's really the goal with a product team, is to focus on that impact. A little caveat here as we think about product team types is we experience these kind of in different phases. As I mentioned, some of the phases we work with companies in is this progress team that's really focused on this product incrementation. So iterating the idea, growing to growth phase, working with existing customers, making things maybe 10% better, week over week, month over month. And then there's also this concept of pioneer teams. And these are really the teams that go out to discover the edge cases of your product, what happens before someone comes into your product, what happens after, and where are the opportunities for your business to grow and have a bigger impact on a journey that someone's on. So as we think about the product team model, here at Headway, we've created this model not as gospel, but more as a guide for us to think about roles, responsibilities, areas of risk. And so we have this model that integrates strategy, design, and development into more of a cohesive, collaborative nature, where we're not going to go into all of these today, but we are going to talk a little bit more about the process and principles for how a product team can be most effective. So again, strategy, design, development. And the thing that's important is that as you're building your startup or your team, the needs of the business change over time, right? In that first phase in that idea phase or that discovery and testing phase, the people you need on that journey are different, right? If you were to launch a startup out of the gate, even if you had lots of funding, it wouldn't be really frugal for you to just hire a full team and not really have any direction or know where you're going quite yet. And so oftentimes that team looks like, a product strategist. Oftentimes this is the founder or the CEO. This could be, potentially someone in sales. It could be a joint role. But really, you're looking after all of these risks. You're trying to address the risks you have in your business model, the risks you have in what potential solution or product you might bring to market, understanding your customers in your market. And then from a design perspective, really using kind of this research hat to work alongside strategy and figure out, where are the biggest points of pain? And often as we think about UX or user experience, really thinking about two things. Like, you're on a mission to figure out, one, are we solving a valuable problem? And two, are we solving it in an intuitive way? And that's kind of the bridge between product strategy and design to figure out, okay, once we have a valuable problem, how can we use design as a tool, as a method, as an approach to bring forward and deliver on the value and solve that problem, with the least amount of friction, with the most amount of clarity. And so some of that is getting into, data driven. So understanding the data and how people are engaging, and rapid prototyping, especially early on. As your product team advances, the lines of communication between the people involved become more complex. So right now you have a few different points where design's working with product, design's working with potentially development around a potential technical stack and direction. And all of those are pinging between each other. But as you go into the next phase, into like this build phase where you have clarity on the mission, what you're moving forward, you have a lot more players involved, and you have people that are getting data from customers, through conversations. You have design that's getting data through customers through rapid prototyping and observation, and you have development getting feedback about the product itself, its quality and performance, and then also the metrics. So understanding where your customers are and using things like segment or amplitude or things like that, where you're getting both sides of the equation. And then you kind of move into this fourth part, which is grow, where you either have a product solution fit, something that tells you need to double down. Maybe you start delivering on mobile, where you have a lot more people involved, a lot more decision points, and often a lot more points of failure in communication. And that's not because people don't align on that, but I think it's mostly because from a communication standpoint, it's hard to keep all of those people in the loop unless you have this common goal. And so one thing we'll spend most of our time in here is talking about just principles of your product teams and how to create them, how to create accountability within your product teams, and how to empower them to make decisions with the data and kind of their areas of responsibility, and take ownership over the common goal and mission that you're on. So we've talked about this in other slides and in other presentations, but risk builds over time. And so I think one of the things that's important to note, and we'll get over an interesting concept that came out of a recent experience of mine that you can apply to your product teams. But essentially, if you're not on a mission to learn together and do that rapidly, you're going to, we see this a lot, you build a product that no one wants, because we kind of leave, we see this as the inception point of an idea or of a product team. We leave on this journey to have a specific impact, and we don't really measure it until the end. And we don't know if we're on the right track or not. So our goal is to figure out if we're going to be most effective as a product team and reduce the most amount of risk as we go along. We want it to look like this, right? Risk will never be zero, but we want it to look, we want to be kind of on a journey to learn and then reduce the risk and learn what we need to bring that risk back down, and empower the team to do that over time. And so one of the ways that you've seen, I'm sure if you're in the lean startup area, is this lean startup model where we've replaced build with experiment, because we think oftentimes build can be confused with building an actual product, something that's functioning. And we really think about it in experiments where we're doing interviews, we're doing potential landing pages, we're testing offers, we're taking these prototypes forward, we're doing proof of concepts and MVPs, to really then measure what the result is and ultimately adjust what we're doing and learn. And so as we think about principles that effective product teams have, it's having this ownership mindset. So rather than saying either, the product strategist or the founder or the CEO or, the visionary is the only one who can own the problem and own relationships with the customer, being able to empower your team to have ownership over an outcome and really communicate the value that you're looking to provide to your customers and have, surrounding your team in that mindset. The next thing that's kind of inherent in this product model versus this department model is the cross-functional autonomous team. So having those teams together around that shared mission, that can make decisions together based on learning. And we see this often with, when we talk to teams that are doing agile, they talk a lot about velocity and kind of how fast they're increasing their velocity, whether that's new people or whatnot. But we don't often talk a lot about increased value that they're measuring to get to the customer. And most of that is because this gap in learning or this gap in actually getting the insights from your customers all the way down into your product team, from the sales process. So the other thing is just killing bad ideas fast with data and not opinion. So being able to test things. I want to caveat it in that I think there's still a lot of intuition, and as you look at some startups that have been successful, where the data told them part of the story and they kind of filled in the rest with their intuition. And so kind of challenge yourself here, make data informed decisions, not decisions based solely on the data, because I think there's a lot of nuance that you can miss if you only trust the data, which is why it's important to go to customers, have those conversations and do really one-on-ones with your customers, but then also look at the analytics of your site, of your product, figuring out kind of where that disconnect is. And sometimes it's only in the messaging, it's only in kind of how you're presenting that solution to them. The other thing is on reducing risk, which we talked about. Focusing on outcomes and not features, that's part of delivering that value and that impact to your customers, and really embodying this learning fast and experiment. So not velocity for velocity's sake, where you're just shipping stuff and you're looking in Pivotal Tracker or you're looking in your Jira tools, but actually measuring the impact it has on your customers and owning that. That's really part of that ownership mindset, like making sure we're moving the needle for our customers and how we can serve them today better. So when we kind of focus more on value that we're delivering to customers and less on just a velocity number to get things done, you can create a more effective product team. One thing, looks like this, I'm gonna have to drag. So one of the things that's really interesting that I was thinking about this talk earlier this week and last week, and one of the things is this acronym called C. So recently I took a motorcyclist safety class, and I thought this was really interesting, and it reminded me a lot of product teams. It reminded me a lot of kind of how we see a lot of founders and teams execute. And so I'll kind of introduce the concept and then talk a little bit more about it. But essentially, the first part here is C, and this is part of evading or like training people to avoid risks on the roadway. So let's say a car stops in front of you, how do you react to it? A deer jumps out in the road. And so they teach you this acronym to try and think through your next steps, and they kind of teach this horizon line as well. That is, 2 seconds. So what's happening immediate in front of you? 4 seconds, what's happening kind of out in the distance, and then 12 seconds ahead of you, what's happening up on the hill that might impact, what I do or where I go if there's accidents or there's a, vehicle parked, and to always be doing this scanning. And one of the things that was really interesting is we had, they did this demonstration on peripheral vision. And I think, this is true for a lot of people that don't empower their teams to go out and find and understand what customers and what the market wants is. We have this like 3% cone in front of us that we can see that essentially the rest of it is blurry or fuzzy at best. And so what we did was, and I'm using a card of a calendar that my wife got me, but essentially, trying to see if I can fit in the video here. What we did was this peripheral vision test where you had to look straight, and you held up a card almost the same size of this, like a 3x5 essentially, where you would walk it in front of you until you got to the point where you could understand what the color was, right? And then you really couldn't tell what the number was or the suit was until you got it right in this like 3% cone, right in front of your eyes. And I think that's really important because a lot of product teams and companies that we talk to that aren't innovating or aren't creating new ways to serve their customers are only looking at, what their customers are doing, right? And we talked about this product team model where you're going out to the market or you're going out to see greater trends, but you're also watching your customers. And if you only search and look through this 3% hole that is your customer's journey, you'll only be able to really increment the experience that you're giving them if you're not giving time to explore and uncover kind of the journey that they're on throughout their market. And I thought that was really applicable to it. But also from a next step standpoint that they talk about is like search. So being able to use your eyes and continue scanning and looking around for opportunities. And they never want you to fix your eyes for more than a second or less on anything, so that you're always taking in this input. And this is a lot like startups where you need to be searching, but you need to also understand what's actionable and what's not. And so the next part of this is really evaluate. So once you empower your team to search for your, in your customers at the marketplace and continuing to discover, how do you evaluate that data and figure out what's meaningful for you and your team? What's applicable? What data do you take and discard and throw away? And what data do you actually say, hey, we need to take action on this. We need to implement, this new messaging or this new value prop, or the way that our customer, described the value that we had, or maybe even pitfalls in the customer journey that, in the user experience that you designed. How do you take that information and then go ahead and apply it? And this last part is execute. And it's kind of highlighted in green here because this is what a lot of agile teams focus on. And that is like the ability for them to just execute really quickly. And that's that velocity we talked about. But the value you have here, and Eric Ries of the Lean Startup has a really good saying that the companies and startups that learn the fastest usually are the ones who win, or some adaptation of that. And so when you're creating your product team, think about not only your ability to execute really fast from a bits and bytes perspective, but your ability to bring your entire team across this journey where you're going from customer insight, let's say on a Monday, and that next week you have something implemented and executed into your roadmap from those insights. So your ability to be agile, not just do agile ceremonies, but be agile in that process and go from learning into implementation for your customers are usually what's going to make your product more effective, and tearing down those silos that we went into from those departments where you could say, oh, hey, it's product's job to tell us what to do. It's design's job to design it. It's development's job to develop it. And combining all of those together where you can give ownership over that end customer outcome. Because then what happens is this search period in the beginning starts to become everyone's job. Not only are you looking at your existing customers, but you're seeing, their behavior, you're seeing what else is happening in the marketplace. And each one of these people play a role in identifying and essentially keeping your eyes moving, versus if you're, kind of a top-down organization or a startup where you're honing in on one specific vision or one specific customer or problem, you may miss all of the iteration and learning that you can do to be most effective and to really adjust kind of what you're doing as a startup to serve your customers more and add more value. So with that, a lot of what we talked about today is more, I guess, philosophical. But I think, the biggest thing that we've learned with startups and creating product teams for clients, our own product teams, is being sure that, you can go back to these principles and implement these into your company and figure out, how do you take the agile ceremonies that a lot of companies do and make it focused on learning and not just going fast, right? So how can you learn together more as a team, how to serve your customers better and be able to be more effective versus we kind of talk about this internally, but basically like instead of being just a ticket taker, how can you empower your team to make decisions and create those areas of ownership and responsibility around kind of the whole journey to your customers rather than just their specific slice of that product team model? How can you make them all come together?
All right, awesome. That was great. I actually have a question. So if anyone's watching has a specific question relatable to this conversation, or if you have a specific question about maybe something you're struggling with within your idea, your startup, your team, we're happy to answer those as well. This is what Open Office Hours is all about: helping you get unstuck, reach your goals, and help you on your journey. But one question I have, Andrew, is if you're having a hard time kind of finding the right talent to help you, get alignment on those principles and those beliefs and getting that structure in place, what are signals that you look for example, in a designer, like when you're looking to add a designer to your team or a developer, what kind of signals are you looking for in the interview process?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is just willingness to wear multiple hats and kind of take ownership. I know, depending on product designers that you work with and their past experience, they might be used to just being order takers where somebody comes in and tells them exactly what to do, how to do it. And some people thrive in that environment where once they're given a direction, they can move really quickly. But in early stage startups, I think, the customer experience needs to be everybody's focus, right? Because if you're not ultimately going from those insights, kind of as we talked about, to implementing it and actually delivering value to your customers, that's really tough. So in that process, look for maybe signals of like previous history. Have they been a part of startups before? What's their approach to to getting feedback from customers and from the team and implementing it, right? Are they more, are they used to working with design leads or design directors or other folks that are kind of distilling down what they should do, or are they part of kind of owning the end-to-end product? And I would caveat it with, there's a lot of specialization today with so many large tech companies that a lot of people and a lot of designers and developers will focus on running experiments on, let's say one screen or a module or a feature for multiple years at a time. And so I think when you're an early stage startup, you're looking for somebody who can apply their skill set across an entire experience and be able to create and reimagine something from scratch and work with you and your customers to essentially hone it into something that's the most valuable. I just saw a tweet from from Airbnb, and we had them on our podcast talking about their team. But essentially, like, they had multiple launches where they learned, every single time they had a new launch, and no one can really remember the day they first launched or the day Twitter first launched, because you're continuously reinventing what you're doing, and the product you launch with initially in your MVP or beta will evolve. And so you want people that can apply their skill set and soft skills and kind of that mentality to take ownership alongside what you're doing, rather than just say, hey, what should I do for this feature? What are the requirements, right? Really try to empower and encourage your team to come together. And so look for those cues in that hiring process where you're trying to evaluate team. Are they going to be in the trenches alongside of me, or are they going to be somebody that I kind of report back to and tell them, exactly where to go and really command, and or am I going to encourage that, ownership model and mindset?
Got it. Awesome. Well, speaking of mindsets, actually, we do have a question from Eshuotosh. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. Here we go. Thanks for the presentation. Would be great to hear your suggestions on executing design sprints in a cross-functional team.
Yeah, this is like that unique, we talked a little bit about progress teams versus pioneer teams. This is like that pioneer team in a lot of cases where you're coming together, but for a smaller period of time and trying to learn really quickly. Ashutosh, do you have any specific examples or specific questions? I can talk a little bit about doing and executing design sprints, but just curious if you had, maybe you had an experience running one or ran into some issues or anything specific that comes to mind. I can chat through too. But our suggestions for doing and executing design sprints with a functional team is making sure that when you get to the first day, and we have a model, I think, on our website. Jacob, I don't know if you want to pull up the design sprints page just to give people context who aren't familiar with them. But essentially coming to the first day and having a problem statement or a challenge statement for your team that you're all aligned on. I think where we've seen cross-functional teams maybe stumble or have a lot of friction in that process is by, when you show up day one and you're not sure what you're trying to learn or what you're trying to validate or invalidate or the assumptions you have around what the sprint is. And so coming together with a challenge statement on that day and then being able to kind of understand the mission you're on in that week, and being able to run it at full speed.
Yeah, I'm getting the design sprints. There we go. Oh. I'm not sure which section you want me to go down to here.
Wondering how it can involve people strategy sales from different teams. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we talked about product teams, Ashutosh, is to be able to communicate the problem that you're trying to solve and why you think their involvement is critical. I know sometimes when you're doing your first design sprints with a team, it's being really clear around how they're going to benefit around it. So as you're essentially recruiting a team, in a lot of cases, you're asking them to stop doing, their day job for a period of time, whether that's a few days out of the week or if they're joining you for the full week, and really, building a business case for why you think pulling everyone together is the best idea. And obviously, we stand behind them in the ability to run design sprints with those teams because there's so many things that that you can't solve for without those gaps, right? And that's part of that product team model is everyone has a different perspective to the problem and to the users and to what you're trying to do that, if you don't give that ownership to the team and kind of, even this is a great example, bringing the team together to own a problem for that week. If you don't do that, designers design, strategy might have a vision, but then it gets passed on and you're kind of passing a moment in time and all the assumptions with you kind of down the chain. And obviously that's why Agile took off and why a lot of teams move away from waterfall is that things move so quickly as you go. You have to figure out when to stop, when to keep going, where to pivot, all those things. So I think involving them and, building the business case for what you think the outcome would be, and whether that's learning or whether that's more insights from your customers, whatever value it would provide back to strategy, development, sales, and marketing, I think is how you build that case. Because a lot of times, depending on your organization, as I mentioned, you're trying to essentially get an investment from the company in going on this learning mission together and saying, hey, we're going to combine our best and brightest across all these teams, and we're going to try and learn something really quickly that if we do it the normal way might take us 3 months, 6 months, a year. So you're trying to accelerate the learning so that you can accelerate the impact and the results of what you're doing. So I don't know if that's helpful, if that answered your question, but I think the biggest thing is just, and there's a lot of guides out there from Google Ventures, and obviously there's a sprint book on gathering that team together and running these design sprints. But I think the biggest thing is alignment, so that when you get to day one, nobody asks why are we here, right? They come in with the mindset ready to challenge each other in a healthy way and to really come together to solve the problem or the challenge statement that you've put out.
Awesome. All right, I'm actually gonna share my screen again. Just gonna walk through, you were talking about mindset a lot. We actually have on our site, if you go to headway.io/founders mindset, you also find it on our resources page. We talk about kind of just the mindset and the principles that we believe in. And we see, we share the common mistakes that founders and startups make, because they might be too bullheaded around a previous mindset or a bias that they have, or they believe in their assumptions so much that they're not willing to change. Those are just a few examples of that. But this series is a great breakdown. We talk about the idea of product versus the business, decision making, as Andrew brought up, risk management, founder market fit. Are you the right founder for the industry? All that kind of stuff. Really, really great conversations in there. So be sure to check that out. And we also have some other events coming up. We talked about holistically product teams, but we also have some conversations from our head of design and head of development talking about what does it mean to build a successful software development team? What does it mean to grow and manage a product design team? So if you're a designer developer and looking to, maybe you're the first designer developer at that startup and you're looking to build a team around you, what do you need to do or what do you need to also put in place within your organization to set everyone else around you up for success and your product for success as well? And then also later in August, Ryan and Robert from our product team, they have a podcast called Exploring Product, and they're going to be chatting with Alan Clement, and he has a really cool technique called simulated shopping that he's been using to find value propositions that resonate with customers, so you can improve your landing pages, improve your marketing, all that kind of stuff. Really, really exciting stuff there. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, be sure to do it. We have a lot of great content for full product teams. We do open office hours like this every single month, so we can answer questions about problems you're facing or around the topics we chat through. You can also check out our YouTube libraries also on our website, so you can go through and see all the past events, go by topic, all that kind of stuff. So be sure to check all that stuff out. I don't see any more questions coming in, so I think we can wrap it up. Unless Andrew, is there anything else you wanted to comment on or share?
No, I don't think so. I think, as you watch this later or have questions, feel free to fire those off to us. And at headway.io, it's on our site as well. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you, everyone, for being here and asking questions and engaging with us. And we hope you have a great day. Take care, everybody.